I think meeting someone that was there, someone who's there, really kind of helps me appreciate what happened.
Being able to hear from a survivor makes it all much more real. It's not a story in a book, it's a story of a person.
May the 6th, 1945, somebody came into the barrack and he said that the guards are no longer in the tower. And I could hear some heavy equipment grinding away, and then the gate just came flying in, and the tank was coming through. It had a white star on it. And I said, "This is an American tank." And there were black soldiers sitting on the turret. I'll never forget that moment. It was that I managed to survive, that the Nazis ran away, the guards ran away from the towers. And I'll never forget the eyes of these soldiers. They were in total shock of what they were looking at. This was a crack unit that worked under General Patton's Third Army. They came through the Battle of the Bulge, and they were in total shock. So here you have thousands of dead bodies decomposing in the square. Others are half dead. So where do you start? We were filthy, skeletons. They had to cut our rags off, and we were DDT'd, and lice were buried under our skin. I mean, we looked, who the hell want to deal with people like that, So they brought in and they put up a tent with army cots, and that was a wonderful thing. It was the first time in months that I slept on a canvas cot, alone. And little things were so precious, But the war still went on for 2 more days. They liberated several camps, Mauthausen, Ebensee, Gunskirchen, and a few others. And the 40th U.S. Infantry Division came to administer the camp.
This sounds like a situation that would have been very difficult for anyone to kind of come across, just the sheer numbers of people and that kind of a problem.
The stench must have been awful. I mean, we couldn't smell it because we lived with it. So the commandant of the camp in Ebensee, they brought up the townspeople from Ebensee. And they were all dressed in their men with hats and jackets and vests, and the ladies in their summer dresses, and they all had scarves in front of their noses. Yeah, I'm sure they were traumatized.
I think the bystanders come into play as well when you're talking about hateful speech or hateful ideas, or the creation of ideologies or promotion of ideologies that are perhaps not a positive influence in our society.
Hitler came to power in 1933. It took him 2 years to get steam up, sort of. It was a big propaganda machinery that the Nazis had. Dr. Goebbels was the minister of propaganda. And the Jews were in the limelight on a daily basis. The propaganda was against the Jewish people, who were called subhumans. So there was a propaganda on radio. There was a daily newspaper called the Stürmer, the Fighter, where Jews were depicted as subhumans on a daily basis, dehumanized, demonized. And then there were these big rallies that Hitler did in Nuremberg, and people bought it and they got on board. So in essence, what was happening in Germany, that the lies became the truth. They knew that the more often you repeat the lie and make the lie big, people eventually believe it, you see. In 1938, every synagogue in Germany and Austria were burned to the ground. And I just want you to think about this. You see, the Nazis had a massive apparatus of deception. What boycott, divestment, and sanctions actually means, it means excommunication, expulsion, and extermination. They wouldn't tell us in those days that, look, we're going to take you to the east in occupied Poland and gas you by the millions. They said, you're going to be resettled.
Sometimes even recognizing it for what it is. Governments have a hard time doing that. Individuals would have a very difficult time. especially in the military, is standing up to the military and saying no.
One thing that I learned from Max's presentation is that the words, it starts with words. So you really have to pay attention to what people are saying, and of course how people are acting towards other people of other groups, whether it's religions or ethnicities and things like this, and to really be aware of what people's intentions are and how they're treating other people.
So how did this affect my family and the Jewish people in Czechoslovakia? So I came from, I was born in a town of about 5,000 people in a rural area in the Slovak part of Czechoslovakia. We were celebrating Passover. Passover is a holiday when we tell the exodus of the ancient Israelites who left slavery to freedom. And it's a beautiful story. And this truly was our Last Supper. When my family, my immediate family, sat together, there were all these beautiful foods prepared on the table, and we told the story of the Exodus. And we retired about 12 o'clock, and gendarmes kicked in the gate and kicked in our door to the bedroom. And here are two Hungarian gendarmes yelling and screaming that you have 5 minutes to pack a bundle, and we are taking you away. And if you have any money or jewelry, hand it over, because where you are going to have no need of this. Can you imagine what a rude awakening this is? Every Jewish home was cleaned out to the bare walls. The synagogue was desecrated, the prayer books and the Talmudic books were burned. And the Torah scrolls were taken out from the ark, cut into pieces and worse. And you know, we lived with these people for many, many generations. There was a Roman Catholic church in town, there was a Protestant church. But you see what happened when the Hungarian fascists took over, the worst came out of these people.
When it comes to polarization, that's probably always going to happen no matter where you go. And that should happen. Anywhere you have freedom, people think differently, and they have the right to express that. But they also have the right, with freedom comes responsibility, and they also have the right to ensure that they may disagree with the other person, but they have to respect the other person, right? The problem becomes when you have polarization added onto that, or driven by nationalism, and you have other dynamics, that kind of drive hatred into the mix of whatever group. Right, now you have a potent mix.
Things are moving very fast. Train was moved onto the main railway station where they hooked on a large locomotive. And then there were the Hungarian military police who came to every cattle car, and the doors were locked and bolted down. And that instant I knew that this is really a bad thing, because now, once the door was locked, I knew that this is not a good thing. So you're 100 people in a boxcar. You're stuck there like sardines in a can, standing in a vertical position. You can't move around, you can't sit down. My mother was stuck somewhere in a corner. You couldn't talk because, can you imagine the pandemonium? Old people complaining, babies crying, and the bucket for the toilet is full. The doors are never open, there's no water, the water has not been replaced. And the train takes off, and the first night comes, and you sort of fall asleep, you sort of roll with a bunch of people stuck together. I can hear the clicking of the wheels on the rail tracks. So on the fourth night, the train came to a stop. It was pitch dark. And I thought that nothing could be worse than what I've just experienced. Standing for all these days without being able to go to a toilet. And I could hear German being spoken. I could hear doors were being opened. Our door opened. Light flooded in. It must have been middle of the night. and there's a man in a striped jacket and a cap, and he's yelling at us, "Raus, schnell, out fast." You're out on the platform, there's a selection, men and women are separated. There were no goodbyes said here. My mother, my two little brothers, and my baby sister, my grandparents, and my aunt were told to go to the left. My father and uncle and I, we were selected. We were told to go to the right. We had no idea what this process meant. There was a terrible smell in the air of burning flesh. I could see several chimneys with huge flames and smoke coming out. And I thought we were in a large industrial area. My father asked them, are we going to see our families today? Because this is what they told us when we were separated on the platform. So he asked them, where did you come from? He said, we just came from Hungary. He says, you don't know, in 1944, you don't know what this place is all about? Well, he didn't know. He said, your families have gone to the chimney. This was the lingo here. The only way you get out of here is you'll die of starvation or beating, but you'll definitely go to the gas chamber. So how do you get acclimatized as a 15-year-old to start a new life as a slave laborer in Auschwitz? As a slave laborer, you had no underwear, you had no socks, no toilet paper, you didn't have a spoon or a toothbrush, you didn't have a locker or a t-shirt. 3 items: cap, jacket, pants, and the most important thing were your boots. My father and uncle were truly my guardian angels, and they were selected out in July for medical experiments. And by that time, I knew selection meant certain death. I only had seconds to say goodbye to my father and uncle. That was a devastating moment. There was no more work here. Typhus broke out because people couldn't hygiene. There was no hygiene, there was no water. They shut the water off, and the lice carried typhus from body to body, and people were dying by the thousands.
The feeling I got when he told us about the separation from his family, the last time he got to see his mom, that really taught me something that it's definitely a human dimension to this, not just something that happened and we should be forgotten. And as we talk about history repeats itself, if we don't take this as something serious that shouldn't be desensitized, then maybe the chances of preventing this happening in the future may be achievable.
We, the survivors, who are the last sentinels, and we know where words starts with words. And the words are like a snowball rolling down a hill. It gathers size. And these bad words are out there, and you can never take it back.
One of his points that he made today was that often what we hear is one-sided. So to be aware when we're hearing stories or we're hearing history or we're hearing accounts, no matter if it's an account from somewhere in Canada or another country, to be aware of, is that story one-sided? Be critical of what you're hearing. Are you hearing the whole truth?
If you really want to know the story of the Jews, it's a long story. We're called the Wandering Jews. And there is Israel today, who is in the same position as Czechoslovakia was at that time, the only democracy in that part of the world. This is a little country. They're the best farmers in the world. They're teaching people how to grow food in arid land, in medicine, in electronics, in sciences, you name it.
I think there's a lot of rhetoric that people regurgitate and they say again. Their father says it, their brother says it. They hear it in their neighborhood, then it must be true. I think if they really understood and had these sorts of experiences to meet people like Max, or to have have the opportunities to go to some of the places, it might change their tune a little bit.
So look, it was really I was honored to be here to speak to you today, and I wish you all the best. Take care of yourselves and of each other, and thank you. Okay.